So check it. I seen a previous video about Christianity not being a white man's religion, more so to the point that white Europeans did not create, they did not found or originate Christianity, that they were introduced to it. I see that video got a lot of people feeling some kind of way. What's obvious is that for most of you, you never really studied it. Because had you did a cursory level of study, you would have been able to discover that. And when I say study, I'm talking about scholarly resources. Resources and books that actually have bibliographies in the back. But before I take it back, I'll add more to it. When you think about Christianity, we know that white Europeans were introduced to it at some point. That's another video that's coming. We know they became the dominant face of it, but just because they became the dominant face of Christianity does not mean that the origin lies with them. And so you have the Council of Nicaea, which came together really to combat Arianism, which was a heresy around the divinity of Christ and who Christ was. A lot of people want to say they put the Bible together during the Council of Nicaea, but that wasn't the case. They really came together to combat Arianism and where the Nicene Creed came from. But here's what's interesting about that. You know, all through seminary, we studied about the Council of Nicaea and Athanasius, and Athanasius' role in the council. The wide consensus of most scholars is that Athanasius led the council, that he was the leader among the bishops at the council. We know that he was the bishop of Alexandria and that he was born in Alexandria. And what a lot of people don't know is that Athanasius was African. He was black. I know when you Google him or when you look at some of the theology books and the depictions of Athanasius, he looked European, but Athanasius was not European. So much so that Athanasius' nickname was the Black Dwarf. You know, and I know it challenges what we know. A lot of people say, well, color not as important. If color wasn't important, why isn't Athanasius depicted as a melanated person, as a dark-skinned person, as a black dwarf, which was what his nickname was? If color wasn't important, why wasn't he depicted for his true self? Knowing that he was a key figure in Christianity becoming the faith that it is, especially around Jesus and his divinity. I never forget, I'm gonna cut it short. When I was in seminary, true story, we were studying Athanasius, and not to cause any dissension in class, I waited to a break, and the professor had a map of Africa up, pointing out Alexandria because we were studying Athanasius. Now, of course, Alexandria is in Africa. So I asked my professor, I said, Athanasius was from Alexandria, right? He was like, yes. He was born there. He was like, yes. I said, and Alexandria's in Africa. He said, yes. I said, was he African? And he said, You know, he never in that moment's dialogue were able to utter the phrase, he was African. Now, we're sitting out looking at a map of Africa. Alexandria is on the map. He was born in Alexandria. He was the bishop of Alexandria. He was nicknamed the Black Dwarf. But when asked, was he African, he couldn't answer. Now, it's not an indictment on him, because that's not the point of the video. My point is, we have to really research the African influence on Christianity. There's a reason the earliest church that we can discover is the Coptic church in Ethiopia. Now, they had a couple different doctrines, but the fact remains that you can trace early Christianity through Africa. Even You find the son of Simon, Rufus, who helped carry the cross with Jesus. You find him later being the contemporary of Paul. So it is clearly obvious that there is a lot of African influence when it comes to Christianity. What I'm going to suggest is that you read, you study. In another video, we're going to deal with the topic that slaves were only Christian because of slavery. So we're going to dispel that rumor as well. And we're going to dispel the rumor that the Bible can be used to force enslavement. We're going to deal with that as well. Drop your comments in the post. Peace.